Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. It's very, very nice. Yeah, oh, absolutely.
Good morning. As you come in, you have four tabletopes on your table this morning. Three of them are identical, and you are encouraged to read that. And after you read that, if you have time left over in the next 5 to 10 minutes, you can also discuss the other question on the table as well. If you've just come in this morning, there's a couple things on the table, one of which we'd like you to read, the welcome aboard to, I can't read it, Captain's Retirement Flight. And there's 3 identical copies of that, and then there's a question on the table as well. You'll have a couple more minutes and a moment to discuss that or read that. Angela Leonard is here with an announcement for you about Vacation Bible School. Then you'll have a few more minutes to talk, and then Mick will come up.
Good morning. So I just have a little clipboard here of items that we still need for VBS. Some of these might be items that you just have lying around your house, like fake plants or tarps, things like that. They're all listed on here, so if you have those items and would be willing to donate them, it would be appreciated. We will return them to you, just label them with your name. We would need them by the 28th because Vacation Bible School starts on the 29th. So I'm going to pass these around. There's also food items if you'd like to purchase them for VBS, okay? So thank you.
Okay, this morning we have the pleasure of hearing from Mick Davey. He's going to speak about life experiences shaping a faith journey. Mick first came to Calvary in 1969 while dating Jan, and he went to the Air Force Academy and served 21 years of Air Force active and reserve duty as a pilot, being stationed around the world, and he retired as a lieutenant colonel. Mick and Jan moved to Denver, both flying for their respective airlines, and have been regular Calvary attenders for over 40 years. They both are retired from the airline industry. And their daughter, Lindsay, and her husband, Jeff, are proud parents to Jan and Mick's granddaughter, Aspen Elizabeth, who was dedicated here at Calvary a couple weeks ago. Currently, Mick serves as the chairman of staff relations. He volunteers for Family Promise, the VIP program, the Calvary's men's group, and he serves on council. He's also volunteered for the Denver Children's Home and is active in the Association of Graduates for the class of 1970 at the Air Force Academy. Both Jan and Mick enjoy doing random acts of kindness. Join me in welcoming Mick.
Thank you, Ann. Thanks, everyone, for coming today. I want to talk about my life experiences and how they really shaped my faith journey. I grew up in a small town in Kansas, about 2,000 people, about 10 miles south of Wichita. But it was a defined community that wasn't a bedroom community as we think of. It had its own identity. It was a great place to grow up. Everybody was welcoming. We had community spirit. My dad was an accountant for the Coleman Company, Coleman Outdoor Camping Equipment, that was headquartered in Wichita, Kansas. And my father was an accountant there. My mother was a one-room schoolhouse teacher back in the day. And she was an exceptional person. Of course, she was my mom, but I think she really was. She was very compassionate. I never heard my mother say a bad word about anybody my whole life, and I can't say that. And I don't know how many people can say that, but she was compassionate, and she was a mediator. She knew how to get people together to get things done. When she was first started as a school teacher, I think she was in her early 20s, and then she got married, and the rule was you couldn't be a teacher in a small town if you were married. So they made an exception. They let her teach on. And then she got pregnant, and there was a rule you couldn't be pregnant and be a school teacher. Well, they made an exception again. Well, finally, when she had a baby, there was no exception. It was time for her to retire as a school teacher. But later on, she became a school secretary and was always in education in our small town. I think the 1950s was a great place to be in America. You know, there were really no wars, there were jobs, everybody had a TV. I got a new pair of jeans every year to go to church, to go to school, not to church. I didn't wear jeans to church. But it was just a good time in our country. And later on, I'd be flying along in the airline business, and guys would say from New York or Chicago, well, what's it like growing up in a little town in the middle of Kansas? And I said, well, it's a little bit like Happy Days, Mayberry RFD, with a little bit of Peyton Place mixed in. And it was a farming community, but as I said, most people worked in Wichita. Wichita was known as the air capital of the world. Boeing, Beech, Cessna, Learjet were all headquarters there. And many of our people living in our town worked there. Our town was unique, I think, too, because we treated everyone the same. There was no discrimination, judgment against anyone. We all had the same basic economic background, and it was a good place to grow up. We had a fairly large Mexican community because the railroad came through and built a stop in Mulvane, Kansas, is where I grew up. And later, after the Mexican families were great, good families, participated in all the events, and they were treated just like everyone else. Years later, when I left town, graduated, went to college and so forth, they decided they would come up with the Citizen of the Year award. And everyone thought, well, it'll be the banker or the doctor or the school superintendent, somebody who's real prominent. They picked Tony Rico. Now, Tony was the middle school janitor. But his family, Mexican heritage, was wonderful. They did everything in the community for other people. Tony could paint these beautiful murals that the high school prom kids would have him paint Paris, the Eiffel Tower, things like that. Very talented man, and he also had a band, and they just gave. They gave to the community. And that's why I was glad to see that Tony was named the Citizen of the Year. Growing up, my idols were the upperclassmen in our school, and I was so blessed to grow up and have people as mentors that were really, really good. They were good students. They were good athletes, which was important to me because sports was all I lived for back in those days. They were involved in the community, and everybody went to church back in those days. And we would dress up in suits and ties, and we lived about 3 blocks from church, and we would walk to church every Sunday as a family. And that was not unique. Everybody did that. My faith journey started before I was born. We built a new church, and they needed a basement for it. And my grandfather, who was a farmer, wheat farmer, had a mule team, and he would go out and he excavated the basement so they would have that. And my parents were involved in the church too. They were both Sunday school teachers and involved in certain committees. And my mother was a Sunday school teacher for the younger kids, and my dad was like for the 5th graders. And 5th grade boys are not real quiet in Sunday school, let's say. And I always had to sit by my dad. And if ever there was a discipline needed, well, I'd get thumped in the head, or I'd get my elbow squeezed because I was convenient to be duped of being the guy that got disciplined, and everybody would pick up from that. So that's how I grew up in the church. One of the most profound things, the early things I remember that sort of helped me decide what I wanted to do was we had traveling circuses. We'd go to these little towns and put up tents and have the show, and they weren't extravagant by any means. And I'd been several times, and one time I went and there was a family there that I didn't know. Most people from a little town know everybody else. And they were from the farm, and 2 boys much younger than me were there, and they were just elated to be at the circus. I'm guessing they'd never been to one before, and they were so happy. And the dad bought them a box of popcorn. They were just so happy. And the clowns came over and did tricks, and they were so happy. And I liked to see happy people. It really made an impression on me. So I was going to be a clown. That was my goal in life. Well, I was sort of the class clown growing up too, so I guess I got part of that fulfilled. So as I grew up in the church, I realized that I needed to grasp this a little better. So I talked to God a lot, and one day I made a pact with God. I said, God, I know you are always going to be there for me. I've learned that in church. You're always going to be there. So it's kind of up to me. I have to be deserving. I will meet you halfway. And together we will have a good team. And that was my relationship with God as a young person. I never back then wanted to pray for myself because I was so blessed, and I think that other people needed it more than I did. So I wanted to pray for other people and not for me, or ask God for anything. All I ever asked was that God give me the strength and courage to face the challenges that I face in life. And I still do that to this day, and it's served me very well. I did ask him if I could have a little humor into my mix, being with him. Now I know that I have guardian angels. When I was about 12, 2 of my friends and I were a little older. We happened to borrow one of the boys' uncle's pickup truck. So we took it out in the back roads of town, and we're driving it. And one of the other kids that didn't have the uncle in the car, in the truck, he wanted to drive. So he was tearing down these back roads, and these older roads had a lot of sand built up along the side. So he kind of got going off to the side and overcorrected. Well, we flipped the pickup truck about 3 times. And of course, no one wore seatbelts back then. But we weren't ejected. I think it was because we were so compacted into the pickup truck. But you never know. We could have had a problem, but we didn't. So I know that I had a guardian angel then. The other time, two other friends of mine bought a 1950 Cadillac for $90. We went to a junkyard. It was in the back, rusting away. So we paid him $90 and no paperwork. We just drove off the lot. But I said, we cannot go on any unimproved roads with sand. Let's go on the highway. So we tore down the highway about 70 miles an hour for about 3 or 4 miles, turned around and came back, and we got it up to 90. We were doing really well. So about that time, we thought, well, we've had enough. Let's go to one of the houses and get something to eat. So we pulled up, got out of the car, walked to the front porch. Halfway there, all 4 tires blew. They're probably original tires from the 1950s, and this car was this was about in the early 60s when we did this. So I know there's a guardian angel up there watching me somewhere. So my real name is really not Mickey. When I was born in Wichita, there were about 6 other boys born at the same time, and they were all named Stephen. And my parents named me Stephen Allen Davey. And the nurses decided they all need a nickname. So there was Butch, Tim, Bucky, Mickey. Well, I got the name Mickey. And my parents picked this up and called me Mickey my whole life. And I didn't even know that wasn't my name till I was like a freshman in high school. And everybody called me Mickey. And so I got hurt in football. We had to do an x-ray, school insurance, submitted the paperwork for Mickey, Davey. Well, they came back and said, we don't have anybody that name. So I decided, well, that's my name. I want that to be their name. So we had an attorney in town, small town friend, and I had to go to Wichita to court to get my name changed legally, and we just added it on the front. So my legal name now is Mickey Stephen Allen Davey. Well, to do this, I had to go to the court, raise my hand and say, solemnly swear to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, and have a seat. And the attorney walked away and went to the judge and kind of talked about saying, I thought, oh no, they know about that piece of candy I stole last week at the checkout. I knew I was dead. Anyway, that didn't happen. So I got my name changed, but I learned a lesson, obviously, from that. I was pretty scared at the time. As I mentioned, high school for me was sports. Everything was about it. I loved it. The whole town embraced the football team. It was like Friday Night Lights. The whole town went. Everyone was there. It was just a great feeling as a community and have people there. We actually, my class never lost a football game when we were there. We won 33 straight, and it was the longest winning streak in the state of Kansas at the time. But we were a small school, and we had 92 in my graduating class. Not very good. So our senior year, someone scheduled us to play Wichita South High School, and they had about 400 in each class. So we thought we were going to get creamed. They came down and played in our home field, and we beat them 32-7. So we made a statement. When I was a sophomore, our sports banquet always featured a guest speaker. And that year happened to be an assistant football coach from the Air Force Academy. And he talked about it. I'm kind of interested. And he shows this movie of all these cadets marching in beautiful grounds. And I was just totally taken. I said, that's what I want to do. So for the next 2 years, I sort of dedicated and channeled my life to do what I needed to get into the Air Force Academy. But just before my senior year, I came to Estes Park on a camp for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. And I was super excited because we were going to be there with the hosts were a football team, a college football team, and all the players that went to that school, and they would be our mentors and guide us through the week and lesson plans and so forth, and the coach was well known. They were the University of Baylor football team. Okay? So anyway, I was totally taken. They were people that I respected before, and we had scripture lessons. We talked about passages and things in the Bible that we could do. And I found a big rock that I would go to and kind of read and be alone. And I thought, I realized that, well, maybe I should be a preacher. That was something I'd never thought of, but I was really interested in this. And then came my huge dilemma in my life. How was I going to tell the NFL and the NBA I couldn't come play for them because I'm a preacher? Well, fortunately, that didn't happen. And certainly wasn't the quality of being in the NBA. I would like it. I graduated from high school, went to the Air Force Academy, got an appointment, and my faith journey was still developing even there. When my parents left me off at the academy, we had to march up this ramp and said, "Bring me men." It's part of a poem. And I know my mother thought that I would march up that ramp, join the Air Force, and probably be going to Vietnam. And it was a tough time for our country, the Vietnam War happening. But that was what I wanted to do. The academy was very, very tough. The first year, you are sort of the bottom of the heap, so to speak. It's physically, mentally, emotionally, and then academically challenged. The first summer is like boot camp. It ends in basic cadet training. And you do confidence courses and all sorts of training out, living in tents and running around the mountains. And the last 3 days of basic cadet training when I was there was called Escape and Evasion. The idea was a group of about 5 or 6 of us were given a bag of vegetables and a rabbit, a live rabbit. And we were sent out in the mountains in some water jugs and cooking utensils, so to speak. And we were to live and escape from the enemy for 3 days and survive. And I volunteered to be the cook, but I wouldn't kill the rabbit. Just something I didn't want to do. But anyway, we made it through that. We marched in at the end of it. The barbecue grills were grilling steaks, and everybody went over and ate about 2 or 3 steaks because they hadn't eaten in 3 days. When I went to the academy, I thought, oh boy, I'm probably in over my head. This is a little bitty town I came from, and there are guys from New York, Chicago, big places that have great teachers and programs, and it's just, I had to do well. So I was so motivated and scared, quite honestly, that every possible moment my freshman year, I studied. On the weekends, guys would go to movies, pick up basketball games. I normally would be doing those, but I studied every minute because I figured I didn't want to be shipped on a train back to Kansas, and I would be, I didn't want to disgrace my family, my friends, my community, the people that pulled for me for this. So I studied very, very hard. And all the grades every semester or quarter along the semester are posted for everyone to see. So I went out, had to stand in line at attention because we were still in the military to get to look at my grades. They were posted up there, and I didn't want to look at them. I thought I did okay, but I wasn't sure. Anyway, I got all A's and 1 B. I was a happy guy. I think I learned, I knew there were a lot of guys at the academy that were a lot smarter, but I thought I can outstudy. And that's what I did, and that's how I got through. The academy is formed, and it's called the Wing of Cadets, and there are roughly 30 to 40 squadrons. It's kind of fluctuated over the years. But a squadron is about 100 cadets. 25 freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. It's sort of like a fraternity, but that's how it's brought up. You start out at the bottom of the heap, and you have to earn your way to go to the top. And I wasn't doing very well the first time. I thought I should be doing a lot better, so I went in and talked to my element leader, who was a senior, cadets train cadets. And after he put me to it ease, I said, I know I can do better. I'm just not doing these. I said, there's just a lot of challenges every day out there. He said, don't look at them as challenges. Look at them as chances to excel. You have an opportunity to go out there and show them what you can do. So after that, I realized, well, that's what I needed to do, and it worked. It was very good for me to do that and to learn that I had to look at it from a different perspective. We tried to keep things on the light side. I was fortunate to have roommates and classmates that I went through the 4 years with, and you definitely are a band of brothers because you go through a lot. But they were all very accomplished in various different areas, but we all had a great sense of humor. One of the things that the Academy had was called Operation Easter, and they would Easter time bring loads or buses out of orphans that we could do an Easter egg hunt with them and have share with them and hide the eggs and have a good time. Well, one of my classmates was real small, and my roommate at the time was real big. So we got him to wear his jacket, his hat, and he went out with all the little kids. He was about the size of a fifth grader, which were out there, and rustled around and fought them off and got Easter egg for us. So I'm just glad we didn't get caught, but we were having fun. It was a sense of relief for us to do something like that. April 4th, 1968, my 20th birthday. I woke up and said, this is going to be a good day. And as you all will know, if you remember, that was the day that Martin Luther King was assassinated. Our alcove mate, we had a room here with a door with my roommate, another room in the alcove for another cadet. He was a freshman guy by the name of Ernie Jennings, who was from Kansas City, African American football player. As a freshman, he was unbelievable, and he lived next to us. And as it turned out, his senior year, he was a consensus All-American and received votes for the Heisman Trophy. He's probably the best football player the Air Force Academy ever had. But when Martin Luther King was shot, it was such a shock to all of us, and especially the African American community. There were people coming in and out of this room all day and the rest of the day and that night. And just reminded me of how profound Martin Luther King was and what a great person he was. And it's something I've lived by my whole life, is that you don't judge people by what they look like. You judge them by the content of their character. And that's what he said in his I Have a Dream speech. And it always stuck with me, and I think that's been my outlook for dealing with people and how I view people in my role, in my faith journey. It's to treat people that way. So we got through that, and right before my senior year, I took my roommate back to my hometown. Now, he grew up, his dad went to West Point, was a B-29 bomber in World War II, and from total military family. He grew up on Terrejón Air Force Base in Madrid. His dad was the base commander, and they had nuclear weapons on the base. And back in the 60s, everything was very strict about keeping protocol for nuclear weapons correct. So it was a very regimented society. So he comes back to my hometown, and show him around. There's not much to see. Take him to my grandfather's farm, and we shuck corn for the meal that night. He ate about 8 ears of corn right out of the field. We had a great time. So the last night we were there, we had to be back at the academy to sign in the next evening. We go down to the pool hall. In a small town, the pool hall is the center of activity. Old men over in the corner, probably my age now, are playing dominoes, and the kids are playing pool, and you get a hamburger, and so we had a couple beers. Now, we were 20 years old, not 21, but in Kansas they had 3-2 beer, Coors 3-2 beer. So we had a couple beers, and about 10:30 it was time legally, by the way. You should realize that. About 10:30, we decided, well, we probably should head back. So let's take a pass through town. Little towns on a weeknight close at 9. There's nothing happening. So we're tooling around town, and I'm coming down the main drag, and there's the park over here downtown. There's not a car in sight, so I'm kind of going a little faster than I should be having a good time. It's probably posted at 15 miles per hour or something. Anyway, I'm whizzing through town. Other side of the park, you can see that where we are is the police. And we go to whiz by, and he puts his light on and comes out. And he's quite a ways behind us because we're going flip. So once we get to the stop sign downtown, I take a right, take another right in the alley, pull up behind the bank, and turn the lights off. Now, I have no idea what possessed me to do that. But anyway, he goes by, and he can't find us. So we kind of go back out another way around town. And pretty soon he comes up behind us with his light on. So my roommate, Crit Hughes, best friend in life, he's going, we're dead. We got to be at the academy tomorrow. They're gonna let us do this, and we're dead. What am I going to tell my dad? So guy comes up, big flashlight, goes it on Crit. You can see his badge and hat. Well, the policeman was Jimmy Reed. And my mother taught Jimmy in the 3rd grade. And she always said Jimmy was one of her favorites. So he looked at me and he says, Mickey, every time you come home, you do something like this. I said, Jimmy, I'm sorry, we're just having fun. He says, okay, I'll give you 10 minutes. If you're not home in 10 minutes, I'm going to tell your mother. So that was small town Kansas. And my friend, to this day, Crit, could not believe how that all transpired. So anyway, I finally graduated from the academy. I won a scholarship to go to UCLA after graduation to get my MBA. I was on the fast track to be one of the leaders, change the Air Force, so to speak. Met Jan at the beginning of my senior year. Let me go back a little bit. And you know, all those years I studied so hard, my freshman, sophomore, and junior year. Well, I met Jan at the beginning of my senior year. I don't think I studied any on the weekend after that. So it kind of all evened out, I guess. Anyway, I was head over heels over Jan. She didn't care. Jan was out on her own. Before I met her, I just got my braces off. I had a brand new car, and I was a stud. And Jan was dating a stockbroker in Denver, and actually the only reason she continued going out with me is that my mother, her roommate in college in Wichita, Friends University was a Quaker school, it was a teaching school for school teachers. And my mother was a roommate of Jan's aunt, and so I knew their family through her aunt. And this aunt that were my parents' best friends, and we always vacationed with them to Estes Park, Green Mountain Falls down in Colorado Springs area our whole lives. So I kind of knew of Jan, but I didn't really know her. But when I started my senior year, I was with one of my friends. We went to Denver to kind of look around and have some fun. And nothing was happening. I said, well, I know this girl that my family knows, and I don't know how, but she was in the phone book. So I called her. She was home, which was unusual. Being a flight attendant on reserve, she could have very well been out on a flight. Forgive me. Anyway, I was smitten. Jan wasn't. I had short hair, Vietnam, guys were not dressed like that, looked like that. So we dated. Well, I think it started out bad the first date. I asked her to come down to a football game, but I had just been named the squadron commander of a new squadron, and I had to sit with my squadron, so I couldn't even, she had to drive from Denver to the football game and sit by herself, and then we had to drive back together in 2 cars. And I'm telling you, I pulled out all the stops. I took her to Shotgun Willie's. Now, Shotgun Willie's was not as it is today. It was It was a restaurant. And I knew where it was, and it wasn't too far from her house, so I thought, well, that'd be a good place to go. She still wasn't impressed. But over the years, several times I asked Jan to marry me, and I always got the same response, let's think about it. Well, anyway, graduated, went to UCLA, and I kind of got distracted out there. There were other things for me to do, and geographical separation didn't lend itself to us being together that much. So we kind of grew apart. When I was at UCLA, my father passed away in that October. And I came back for the funeral and hadn't talked to Jan, but she showed up. She showed up at the funeral. Then I knew she was a person of character. And I really wanted to get married, and she didn't really want to. But out of the kindness of her heart, she said yes. So, graduated from UCLA. I went to pilot training in Enid, Oklahoma. And that was the clincher because there's not much in Enid, Oklahoma. So, I think she must have felt sorry for me. So, we got married. 10 days later, after we got married, I went to Germany for 2 years. Left Jan in Denver. But it worked out. We had always had a long distance relationship. And we were fortunate. We saw each other about every other month. She either got time off from United Airlines, she was a flight attendant. They had a program if they went to graduate school, they got 4 months off. So she got 4 months off to come to Germany. And first time we'd ever really worked together. And spent 2 years in Germany. And then I came back to, got a assignment to McCord Air Force Base, which is sort of between Seattle and Tacoma, about 20 miles apart. So it was perfect. I was flying out of McCord Air Force Base. Jan was going up to Seattle to do her flights with United Airlines. So we never had a conventional relationship. Most people live together and then maybe get married. Well, we got married and didn't live together for 2 years. But it worked out just fine. It worked out just fine, as you know. One of my assignments toward the end of my flying career on active duty was in April of 1975 when the fall of Saigon and Vietnam was happening. And the North Vietnamese had pretty much taken over the South Vietnamese country and were invading Saigon. Now we'd fly into Tan Son Nhut Air Base, which is right in Saigon. And we would take plane loads of people being evacuated to Clark Air Base in the Philippines to get them away, to save them from becoming a slaughter, which it really was. It was very bad. So we would take plane loads, and it got so hectic at the airport that people were storming the airplanes and trying to get on, or even holding on to the gears, housing of the gears. And it was people were very desperate. Desperate people do desperate things. It's always been one of the things I've learned to realize. And so they gave us small firearms to protect ourselves in the plane because you didn't know how desperate and what they would do to get on the airplane. And then our last couple of trips, they said to keep a record, they wanted every passenger getting on the airplane to be on a manifest. The manifest is a passenger list. They needed to account for the people that were leaving the country. So we pulled in one day, and they said they have to be on this manifest. It's just the rule. And a full colonel come out, and we're all captains, and he said, well, I'm going to bring some people out and put them on your airplane, and they're not going to be on a manifest. You're going to take them to Bangkok, Thailand. And I said, Colonel, no, I'm sorry. We just got the briefing from our command, Military Airlift Command, and we can't do that. So he left, and out come a two-star general. He says, Captain, I'm going to bring some people out, put them on your airplane. They're not going to be on a manifest, and you're going to take them to Bangkok. And I said, General, I can't do that. I was told I can't do that. So he left, and out come two guys, black suit, glasses, walkie-talkies, thanks to CIA. And they said, we have a letter here from the President of the United States. It says you will put these people on your airplane and take them to Bangkok, Thailand. We said, Yes, sir. So that's so we took them to Bangkok, and they were very well dressed. They were probably very high South Vietnamese diplomats, officials, and they were leaving everything behind. They certainly would have been killed had we not got them out of there. And they carried very heavy suitcases filled with gold ingots that we had paid them off with. And I always thought, why didn't I run the cabin altitude up to about 18,000 feet so they take a nice long nap, and I'd just go back there and open the suitcase and grab a couple for myself, a couple of gold ingots to remember the day. But that didn't happen either. So I separated from active duty in the Air Force. I stayed in the reserves for active 7 years and reserve for 14. And I joined the airline. Got hired by Hughes Air West. Howard Hughes had a little regional airline on the West Coast, and I got hired by them and spent the first year as a third officer, flight engineer. We had 727s, and we ran all the systems, fuel and heat and hydraulics. And then at the end of my first year, I checked out as a co-pilot, and I got based in Seattle, which was probably the most senior base in the system. And I was the bottom co-pilot at the base. So I'm to bid for next month's schedule. And when you're at the bottom, you're on what's called reserve. And somebody gets sick, or they need an extra pilot, so to speak, that you would have carry a beeper. They'd call you, and you'd call them, and they'd say, come on out, you need to cover this flight. So I figured, well, I'll be on reserve. I'm the bottom guy. That's just the way it works. But everybody always says, well, you should always just bid for a line of time. A line of time is your schedule for the whole month. You know when you're flying, what days you're flying, what trips you're flying, and who you're flying with. It's a nice schedule, and everybody wants to have that as opposed to being on reserve. So I just bid all the schedules. Well, darn, I got the best schedule in the world. Flew Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday every week, great trips. Couldn't believe it. Well, I come to find out I was flying with Captain, I won't mention his last name, he might be alive, I don't know. But anyway, he was a World War II Navy pilot, and he was a bully. He was demeaning to co-pilots and the flight attendants, and he was just not a nice person. And nobody would fly with him. He had the best schedule in the world. Nobody would fly with him except me. And I didn't volunteer for it, so I knew it was coming. I read it the day I went out there. Get on the plane, fly around for a couple of days, and they were right. He was just awful, just not a happy person. And he liked confrontation. I think everybody kind of put up against him. That would make it worse. So I thought about, how am I going to handle this? So at the end of the second day of a 3-day trip, he says, well, you probably think I'm a jerk and an SOB, don't you? I'm going, well, I said, Frank, I've been flying with you for 2 days, and I've been trying to think of something nice to say about you. You're a great mind reader. And I don't know what happened, but anyway, he totally changed. So I wanted to get out of the cockpit. I didn't wait for him to reply. Set my bag in the galley, and went back to talk to the flight attendants. I come back and my bag's gone. He carried it down the steps and on the ramp. Next day, we come out in flight. I put the bag down. I got to do my walk around and go up to the cockpit. My bag's gone when I come back. He put it in my seat. Had everything nice for me. I just think that he wanted to have a confrontation. I didn't provide him that. And so I don't know what happened, but he treated me like gold the rest of the time. But I never flew with him again. So I need to get to my retirement flight that you might have seen the flyer for. It's traditional in the airline business to have your family on board. It's traditional to have a bit of a ceremony. So I was scheduled for this flight to fly to Orange County, California, sit for half an hour, and fly back to Minneapolis, which is my base. My daughter and her boyfriend and husband-to-be lived in Orange County. I flew Jan out the night before to Orange County, and I bought them all first-class tickets so they could be with me on my retirement flight, because my daughter had never flown with me when I was a pilot. So I had it all greased up. I'm ready to go. I get up in the morning, my flight to go out to Orange County to pick them up to come back. And from there, we were going to catch a flight to Rochester, New York, up in the Finger Lakes area, because our son-in-law now, his family have a lake home up there. We've been there many times, and it was just spectacular to be with him. So I was going to have a great retirement flight. So I get up early in the morning. I call flight control and said, "Hey, this is Captain Davey. I got my first retirement flight today. Tell me, how's the plane looking?" I said, "Well, got some bad news for you." "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, we've canceled your flight." I said, "No, this is my retirement flight. Captain Mick Davey, right? Now, what gate am I leaving from so I can get over there?" He said, "Well, your flight's been canceled." I said, "Well, what happened?" He said, "It was the end of the month. I think it was June 29th, June 30th. They ran out of captains." And that happens sometimes when there's interruptions in flights and you have to get people to come out and fly, and they get illegal to fly other flights because we have duty time regulations we have to follow. So I was just heartbroken, and I didn't know what to do. So I called Jan. It was like 4 in the morning out in Orange County. I said, "Jan, the flight's canceled. And you get a hold of Lindsay and Jeff, and you guys get out to the airport and see if there's any way you can get a flight out of there somewhere." This was 4th of July weekend. There's no flights. There's no seats anywhere. So I go out toward the flight, and I see an agent, ticket counter agent, who used to be a crew scheduler. And I said, "Hey, this is what happened." I said, "How can I get my family to Rochester, even Minneapolis, by the time I get back?" And she said, she got on there. She was great. She said, "Well, I can send one through San Francisco, one through Detroit, and one through Memphis, and they might get there in 2 days." So it's not what I wanted to hear. So I go out to the podium where you check in board the flight, and the agent's there. She says, "Hey, how's your day going?" And I said, "Well, you don't want to know." So I briefly told her. She says, "I'll take care of it." I don't know what she did, but she got Jan's phone number, Lindsay's phone number, and I knew there were no seats available. I looked at San Diego, possibly you could get down there. That's why I told them that early. They could get to San Diego and get on a flight to Minneapolis, maybe catch up with me. But there were no seats on that flight. I don't know what she did, but she arranged a crew van, some van that picked them up at Orange County Airport, took them an hour to get down to San Diego, got them on a flight, and they got there about 10 minutes before I landed. So I got a guardian angel somewhere. So as it worked out, we made our flight. Had a great. There's a book up here. Jan made for me. It's her specialty. She's amazing at that. And some of my Air Force and airline times. There's a picture of me jumping into one of these Finger Lakes with my uniform on about 2 in the morning, because I said I'll never wear it again, so I had to do that. And so that's how I retired from the airlines. And that brings me to present day. It's like, here we all are at Calvary. How did we all get? Look at the different paths that we took to end up at Calvary. We came here in '69. We were gone for 10 years in the Air Force and came back at the end of the '70s. And Larry Lowhead was pastor, and Mary Holst became pastor later. And when we came back after being 10 years away, it just felt like home. It's like we should be here. When I come into Calvary, it really recharges and strengthens my faith. Mainly, to me, the church is people. It's the relationships we form, brothers and sisters in Christ, leading a Christian life, and the things that are very important to me. It's something that I really cherish. And we have the men's club. They're my band of brothers now. We have a great time, and once again, it reinforces and strengthens my faith. One final story is we all are brothers and sisters in Christ. For Ann's 10-year reception anniversary, Nadu and I had to go. She knows what's coming. Nadu and I had to go get all the food and all the punch ingredients to make everything that she likes. Nadu calls it I don't know why, funeral punch. So I told that dude, when I die, I want it to be called party punch, okay? So we have all this stuff, and we go to Walmart, I think the last place. We went to Sam's Club, Walmart, and I got a cart full of things. So the dude takes off and says, I want to get some of these cookies like my mother used to make. And she went to a separate line, and I had the church's credit card. And so I go through, and the lady's ringing it up, and she's African American, and all this stuff is piling up. So that dude pays for hers and comes over and starts bagging all this stuff up. And this lady says, ma'am, this is this gentleman's groceries. I said, no, that's okay. She's my sister. The checkout lady looked at me and she says, I want to be your sister too. So there again, we are brothers and sisters in Christ. We all may look different, but isn't it the content of our character that's what's important? And Calvary is so talented. We have so many people that do so many good things that it just amazes me. And being on staff relations, I know what our staff does and how accomplished they are, dedicated, innovative, and we have a lot of that right here today. So I think Calvary is a wonderful place to be, even though we came here on different paths. It's a great place for me. Yes, it's a great place for me. And it's a great place for you. Thank you.
We have time for one or two questions. Rosemary.
Wichita. What? 2 years before. Well, retired in 2007, 12 years ago, and I did a lot of volunteer work. I worked at the Denver Children's Home, and I was in charge of fundraising. Of course, that was the start of the recession, and I'd worked my whole professional career in Minneapolis, and I didn't have a lot of contacts here, but I did my best, and we raised some money, but with the recession looming, big business was not really going to be contributing much in that respect. The rabbit, it was alive till some guy put a rock to its head. But we ate it. And we had some few greens that we found along the beaver ponds. And so their son Marcus is an Air Force Academy graduate too. I'm proud of him and what he's doing there too. Yes, Bill. My I have to say that our class distinguished itself. We've given more to the academy in terms of funds and enrichment programs, but we have a lot of people that have done very well. And one of the things I did was one of my classmates lived here, and he was an entrepreneur, started a business. Wife got cancer, and he just didn't have the funds to do well. So I stepped up and organized a fundraiser for him. This was way before GoFundMe, and talked to all of our classmates. And one of our classmates, a very good friend of mine, is a guy named Greg Popovich, who's a head basketball coach at San Antonio Spurs, very well respected. And when you know somebody growing up and you see them now, sometimes you look back and just say, how did that happen? But Greg is a very generous person. He's not like he appears on TV. Jan calls on him all the time when it's not nice to reporters. But anyway, he's a great guy, and he's very generous to our class and to the academy. Any other questions? Yes, Jan. I think it's in the flyer. Well, anyway, I've always looked fairly young for my age, and when I was a brand new co-pilot in Seattle, like I said, it was a senior base, and all the flight attendants probably had 40 years of seniority, and I had one. And they never had new pilots, so when I was in the base there, they'd always come up and look at us and make a comment. And this one crusty old flight attendant came up and looked at me, and she said, "Captain, we got to watch this one. He's got a Sunday morning face full of Saturday night ideas." She was profoundly correct. Anyway, that's my faith journey, and I'm glad to be here.
Will you join me as we pray for Mick? Gracious God, we are so grateful for the path that you have led Mick on to bring him to this time and to this place, to this family of faith, Calvary. What a wonderful reminder of how unique each one of our paths is, and how it really is remarkable how we've each ended up here together in this place as sisters and brothers, siblings in the Spirit. Lord, I thank you for the people in Mick's life from a very young age, all through his schooling, through his Air Force Academy, through his professional career, who have mentored him and shaped him into the man he is today. I thank you for Jan, for Lindsay, Jeff, Aspen, the family that you have blessed Mick with. Lord, continue to guide him now in his retirement years, in these years of giving back in so many ways. Continue to give Mick a deep sense of your love for him and for his life and purpose for his life as well. May we be inspired by his story to live more fully into our own. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
That was great.
Sort of a different person. I think I'm sort of a different person.
No, it was great. That's why I love these, because they're all so different.
Well, it was a journey, believe me. It was a journey.